requests. Call the meeting to order.
So today we will continue with overview by Anna, HR Director, for personnel requests. So today she'll go through individual requests and recommendations, information on those. And then next week we'll hear from some departments on some of those requests. But today she'll just be giving you an overview and letting you know what is entailed in these requests.
Okay.
I'm picking up where we left off yesterday. We left off at kind of going into each individual position request or personnel request submitted in the auditor's office. Aside from this, so, we'll work through just a brief overview of each of these types of requests. And then the remaining thing kind of after that, before we usually cover everything and then we circle back. Actually work through and see where consensus is for each of the items. Aside from this, the only remaining item is any discussions over the sheriff's office step pay plan. And so that's something that's still under review, so we'll probably touch on that next week for budget, but we'll be sure to have that included next week and discuss that before we kind of circle back and go through it in more detail. So I'll be reviewing today the new position requests, received, reviewed, the reclassifications I'll touch on just for a little bit, and then salary adjustments. That's up to date. We have 61 salary adjustments to review. Those 5 salary recommendations from HR that I mentioned yesterday, and then the review of elected officials' salaries, because we do have a few requests. But we'll, as we have in previous years, kind of look at them all together for comparison.
Only suggestion is, go back one slide. Going forward, could you get the font a little bit bigger? Look.
Yes, sir, I can do that.
What was the question?
I want the font a little bit bigger.
A little bigger.
Fonts.
Yeah, fonts.
Or if you can't do that print size, make it bigger.
Okay. I can. That makes me nervous. You're not going to like any of the following slides, I think, after this.
Well, you didn't know I was hard, I had vision problems, but you do know I'm old.
We can't talk, we can't say that. See? Honest teaching me. He can, but
He can say that.
I'm self-identified as an old man.
What, is any of this in here, or is it all up there?
It's in there, too.
Okay, I feel better.
it's little on here
Is that a
too.
handout?
Yes, sir.
No, it's on, it
Yesterday's?
is
Oh,
on the
yesterday's.
budget, in the budget folder.
In my office.
It's been updated.
Okay. Yeah, I've got that.
Is anything in there?
Look too up there.
I can tell you.
I just feel
Yeah.
an obligation to look at this. You didn't go to make it just so you can read it, right?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, wow, thank you, ma'am.
No, I did it. I tried to take up all of the entire slide to make it as big as possible.
I can actually see it without glasses.
But once, if you're wanting to work through anything, what we'll likely be doing throughout the discussion, if the court does want to start to see different figures for different scenarios, whether it be for the new positions or salary requests, what we can do is jump into the actual worksheet that the auditor's office has prepared. And so they could start to manipulate some of those numbers if the court wants to see scenarios. So you may see some flipping back and forth for that. And that sheet is a lot easier to make bigger and magnify.
And it's also on y'all's drive as well, the Excel sheet
Yeah,
that y'all can pull up.
thank you.
Can I pause real quick? Someone was saying that they can't see the screen you're sharing
Oh,
on the feed.
Yeah, I'm not getting it to come up,
Okay.
unexpectedly.
okay.
I don't think it's that big a deal. we can see it.
Yeah.
I connected through HDMI today, so I'm wondering if that's why, instead of through the,
I'm good, let's go.
Yeah, you have to connect to that clip share.
which, I'm sorry. Is there another little dongle here?
Yeah, if you Wi-Fi and connect into the Zoom, you'll be able to screen share through Zoom. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, that normally works and it comes up and we have it as a feed and we send it out. For some reason, I'm getting a blank screen today.
Okay,
It was working yesterday.
okay.
You were out yesterday.
I can pause real quick and connect. I'm just waiting to be let on the court meeting. Okay. Hopefully that works for everyone. So here I've outlined just a summary of the positions being requested by what department, what titles are requesting, and the salary requested for those new positions. And then I've, based on work volume and staff count information compared to both departments within the county and our peer counties, I have come to a kind of HR recommendation for each of the position requests. You can see at the bottom in yellow, you have the total, just salary, not, this doesn't include benefits and whatnot. The salary, total salary.
Sorry about that.
If the court were to say yes to all of the requests, it's $822,482.
Salary.
Salary alone, right.
You got that figured, don't you, on on that worksheet?
Yes, that is exactly right. That plus benefits plus additional equipment.
Is the, where's that on this?
It's in the main, it's, New positions, including benefits.
Okay, so it's $400,000 more dollars then, basically,
Yeah, so about 1.2 million
1.2 million. Okay,
fringes.
That's if you did them all.
every one of these.
Yes. And so I've categorized our recommendation in 3 ways. So that's yes, HR would recommend them based on the data we've compiled. No, we would not recommend based on that same data, or an O for other. For the O, the data seems to support the request, but what is being requested in the justification by the department may not coincide with a full-time position or a long-term position, something like that. I also, you'll see in some of my yeses, there's some salaries next to the Ys with parentheses. That just means, like, yes, there's justification for the position, but we would recommend a different salary based on either internal parity, what currently exists, or that compensation ratio that we've compiled. So that's where it's a minor difference in what's being requested. So a reminder of kind of the data that we look at when reviewing all of the salaries. So we are often getting staff counts from similar departments for other peer counties. We are also pulling work volume data where available. And so some of the offices where it's easily available would be our courts, who report to the Office of Court Administration. So they have reports that we can download and view case counts for those departments. Other departments that we also have data easily accessible is our law enforcement offices, such as the DA and Sheriff's Office, where we're pulling the Crime in Texas report from the Department of Public Safety. And so where available, we are pulling that work volume data, and we're putting it and synthesizing it in a way to show the court what that volume looks like compared to their staff, and not just internally here to the county, but also what it looks like against our peer counties. Okay. So first we have 2 constables' offices. One is requesting a clerk, and the other is requesting a deputy constable. You can see there I have no's for those just based on the work volume and the amount of papers that they've received. We'll go to the next slides, and here's my constable data. And so there on the right-hand side, I have 2 sets of data displaying both the total amount of papers received for 2024 and by precinct. And we could see there, the highest volume is precinct 3. Our requesting departments for those positions are precinct 4 and precinct 5. So precinct 4 is requesting a clerk position, and I'm sorry, are they requesting a clerk position? Yes, precinct 4 is requesting a clerk position, and precinct 5 is requesting a deputy constable. For precinct 5, there's no significant volume change over the past few years, and they have half as many papers received per deputy as precinct 3. For precinct 4, they have the lowest amount of papers received amongst all precincts and the lowest amount of papers received per deputy position. So that's what led to the no's there for HR. We have a no for the county sheriff's request for an investigator, an additional investigator. There's actually a decreasing trend in offenses according to that Crime in Texas report, and we actually have 6 peer counties that have higher work volume per staff compared to ours when you look at their offenses. And so that data is here on this page. And so you could see those two bottom tables, that is the county sheriff's information. Again, we compile that staff count for our peer counties, and then the number of offenses. You could see that downtrend there in the right-hand corner. So we have two sets of data for the number of offenses. We have the number of offenses for the sheriff's office only, and then the number of offenses for all McLennan County agencies in blue, in that blue line. So there seems to be a downtrend, and then the bar chart there in the bottom middle, you can see the average offense count per sheriff's office is 4.3, and McLennan is sitting at 3.3 offenses per personnel in each of those corresponding sheriff's office for our peer counties.
So was there the basis for that addition for any other reason?
So
Volume?
the justification from the department is volume-based. They're saying the amount of cases, that caseload is increasing per investigator.
Oh,
They have 11 investigators dedicated to cases that require investigation. They have a total of 21 investigator positions, but those other positions have other different types of assignments aside from a case management or a caseload. So that is the justification that they have. So down into our other, so Constable Precinct 3 has the highest volume of papers received amongst our constable precinct. And I'm sorry, I keep saying papers, and I don't think those folks who may be listening may not know what those are, but papers are things that are orders issued by their corresponding justice of the peaces for their precincts, and it's writ of attachments, things like evictions, things that have to be delivered and served to individuals within their jurisdiction. And they're requesting a clerk. The justification for the request is that they will see an increase in administrative work as a result of the implementation of a new case management system. So that's the new Tyler product that's being rolled out. But I think that's over the next year or so. And so their justification is that will somehow require more administration. Typically, there is an increase from what HR has seen with system implementations. There typically is an increase, a temporary increase in work volume throughout that implementation, but following that, that should level off. And so rather than a full-time position, we would recommend first a part-time clerk position. They have a budget for part-time clerk. I think it's only $6,000, perhaps increasing that. And then after the year and after implementation, if that work volume persists, then the court reconsidering a full-time position is the basis for why we took that route. Aside from that justification they provided, they have the most work volume, just papers being received from the JP. So that's on the top right-hand corner there. This table here. This is their precinct 3 is the highest. So 2 items to consider: their justification, maybe an alternative to what they're requesting, and then they do have the highest volume. So the next request here, we have Just as a piece, Precinct 4, they are requesting an additional full-time clerk. And based on new cases filed this year, there does seem to be an increase trend amongst the new cases being received, specifically with truancy. And so we have that as a yes, and that volume information I have on this slide here. There are two charts on the left displaying the JP activity. The one on the bottom is showing you the projected cases for 2025. This is information from OCA, the Office of Court Administration. We pulled that information for all the precincts, and you can see here projected cases. They have a high amount. There's an asterisk with the cases for Precinct 4 and Precinct 5. Judge Richardson's justification for some of this volume is the amount of truancy being seen and pushed through their court. He is saying there's multiple hearings involved in each truancy case reflected in that OCA report. So given that kind of information and guidance, HR explored that. OCA has a very clear outline of what those procedures look like for truancy, and there is a minimum of 2 hearings per truancy cases. So we added a factor of 2 for truancy cases seen by the precincts. Those truancy cases are primarily seen by Precinct 4, Precinct 5. So we have adjusted those numbers based on those OCA procedures requiring 2 hearings. And this is the result here. So based on those additional hearings, you have Precinct 4 sitting at a projected amount of cases of 2,976. But if you boil that down per staff member, you could see they're in line with Precinct 1, Place 1, with the highest amount of volume per staff member. Both Precinct 1, Place 1, and Precinct 4 have requests submitted for a new full-time court clerk, and that is something that HR is recommending for both of those precincts based on this data here. The next highest cases per staff we're seeing from a precinct is Precinct 1, Place 2, where they're at 670. So there does seem to be a disproportionate workload there amongst the precincts. So that's why we're recommending that. Also, on the top chart there in the left-hand corner, you could see staff counts of JP employees amongst the other counties and what that looks like.
Question for you. Would 1-1 and 1-2 possibly have anything to do with one of our JPs that was out for an extended period of time?
This is just based on 2025 year-to-date information. Cases received year-to-date projected out through the end of the year. What we also did and adjusted for in our projection is that there aren't truancy cases during the summer. And so we even accounted for that and decreased our projection, knowing that there's not going to be truancy in the summer, and it still resulted in this high case count projection for the year.
On the, like Judge Richardson going to the jail all the time and setting bonds, is that more of a caseload for him at all?
He did mention that as justification for that it does involve some back administration for his staff.
Does he,
following that.
Does he still do that? Is that,
He takes his turn.
there's not many turns though.
Yeah, I think
Well,
the turns have
hired 3
decreased
part-time
since
people.
we.
I thought we hired some people to do that.
We did. So it's not as high as it used to be, but we can get the court exact numbers on the magistration activity. I think we actually already carved that out. It's not pretty, and so we just need to make it pretty. So we have yeses for the JP request for court clerks based on that information. We just displayed. Next, we have maintenance of buildings. Maintenance of buildings is requesting 2 positions. They are requesting a maintenance tech 1 position and a custodian position. And their primary justification for requesting that is the additional facility square footage having either coming soon or already added to their workload. And what we pulled for that, it's hard to get work volume comparisons for maintenance because every county has different contracted vendors, different size of facility, and things like that. So that's hard to account for, but we do at least have a position count of peer counties' maintenance departments or facilities departments there. And so it's on the left-hand table there. You could see the position count for MOB amongst other counties, the average at 37, and McLennan County sits at 29 average employees. So based on that and the added facilities, we have that as a yes. Next, we have Road and Bridge, Precinct 3 and 4 requests. Precinct 3, equipment operator, senior position, and Precinct 4 has 2 equipment operator requests and 1 equipment operator senior positions. We have those as yeses. The source for this data that we used was TxDOT. So we pulled center lane mile reports for all of the peer counties and then got their staff counts as well. We removed any non-construction roadwork positions from these staff counts to try to have these match as much as possible because we know there are precincts there are other counties that work on a unit road system. So we try to eliminate those. So anything that said anything like engineering or project management or superintendent or things like that, we removed and kept it at foreman, construction lead positions, and then all the actual construction positions. So that's what this table represents. And you can see McLennan County, the average amount of miles per position amongst the county is 9, and McLennan County is sitting at 14. So with that as the basis, HR is recommending yes to those road and bridge requests.
But you didn't look at the individual precincts?
I didn't because I think even with the requests, it would result in a higher miles per employee.
If you go by the roughly 15 per mile road, 15 miles road per employee, which is what we're pretty close to right now, I'm actually 5 short right now.
Yeah. And bringing this up, if hopefully it's a census ever comes out and whatever we do, the road miles ever get straightened out, to be more fair?
No.
Will they ever get straightened?
Reason not, and let me explain. I've been 16 years in precinct 4, and I've lost a lot of voting boxes, but I've never lost a bridge or a mile of road because they have to go where the density is.
Sure, okay.
And so it never has it resulted in a change of road miles or bridges.
It'll be 2030 before the next census.
Yeah. But if they ever did, could we move those positions around if we had to? I'm just saying, because if you lose the
What
mile.
gets tricky on that is then I'm ended up you're taking care of some roads that's still in my precinct.
Well, no, I'm just
You see
saying if
what
the
I'm saying?
precincts do move, if they ever do move.
I don't know.
So, I imagine Ben would probably give up 150,
Sure. Yeah, he's got 8 more miles.
160 miles.
Yeah, sure.
120 when it comes to the ditches.
Right, yeah.
So, I mean, that's like I would be an absolute,
A nightmare.
impossibility.
I don't see, all due respect to everybody here, I don't see one, office giving up employees to another one.
No.
No matter what the reason is.
I would, hey, and it would, we would, if we could do that in a perfect world, it'd be wonderful, but.
I I think it'll always be that way, such that precinct 4, with the vastness of the western side of the county, and even though there is, where the majority of the development is, but, it's just, there's just a lot of space between.
Yeah, I got you.
In between there.
Sorry, Anna, didn't mean to get off on a.
Well, and just to give you, if it was all squared away from a employee per mile of road, precinct 1 with 238 miles would have 14.88 employees per mile. Precinct 2 with 212 miles would have 15.1 employees per mile. Precinct 3 with 236 miles would have 14.75 employees. And precinct 4 with 397 miles would have 15.27 miles per employee. That's a little graph.
And precinct 2 lost some miles due to Hallsburg being incorporated years ago, so that would have helped smooth the numbers a little
But
bit.
don't we take care of those roads though?
No,
No, we hadn't been, I mean, there's been a few interlocal agreements
Yeah.
at the time, but not much. I mean, it really, the reason a city was established there, the basis of it never happened. Yet, we're left with a city that has no tax base and no money. What do you think?
yes, sir.
Proceed.
Next, we have a request from the DA's office, the district attorney's office, for an assistant district attorney, level 2. And work volume is the justification for them, and the data supports the existence of that work volume. And so we have a comparison here amongst other counties as well. And so the data point used for the assessment, it's these two tables up here that I'm using for the district attorney's office. And so we used the category of cleared offenses under the Crime in Texas report from DPS when reviewing work volume for the DA's office. We've done that now for the past 3 years. It cleared offenses mean typically that there's enough evidence to turn over to prosecution. And so those are the cases that we're counting for work volume, and so we could see an uptick 2022 to 2023, and then when we put those offenses against staff counts for DA offices amongst our other counties, or our peer counties, we're tied for first for the most offenses per staff or DA position. And so that was the basis for the recommendation there.
Yeah, just like everybody, I've been inundated with all the smaller cities and everybody telling me how good the DA is doing and how they're getting stuff done. So I don't think we've had that for a while.
So there's a deviation in salary. So the max salary right now for ADA 2s is $104,000. They were requesting $110,000 for this new position. It would kind of place it out of line with the existing tier, and then the comp ratio at 104 is fine. I believe it was close to, if not at a 1. So that's why we're saying yes, but we would recommend a different salary. They have 2 levels of pay for ADA 2s. I think it's like 101, and then a set of ADA 2s are at 101, and then another set of ADA 2s are at a 104. So this is that higher end of their existing salaries. I already touched a bit on request from the Justice of the Peace, place one, for their court clerk. And again, just based on the work volume in the table I already displayed, we would be a yes,
And again, you said that was 2025, right? The
Yes, sir.
data for the, okay.
based on 2025. Amongst the kind of work volume data that we rummaged through, there seems to fluctuate, year to year, but the last couple of years, there seems to be an increase there in JP activity.
Precinct 1, where are they gonna put somebody at?
She has mentioned kind of a issue with facility space.
I think Dustin's working with them on
The spot?
Yeah. The last one I have here is a request for a network administrator tier 2 for our IT department. And based on staff count, amongst other peer counties, we feel like there is justification for the request. So here, again, work volume would be hard to try to synthesize for an IT department. The IT department did provide a history of work volume for them, and they do have quite a bit of projects on their plate that require network support. So they did provide that, but for amongst the other counties, usually the amount of users affects the work volume of the IT department. So we have the current employee counts for all of our peer counties. And so we've compared that to their staff count. And so you could see on average, there are 47 employees being supported by each IT staff member. And for McLennan County, they're supporting 52 employees per IT staff member. And so that was the information used there. Those are all the position, again, there for both of those last two, I didn't mention my salaries in parentheses. So for precinct 1, place 1, their court clerk, I am actually recommending a slightly higher salary because that's the lowest salary we have right now for amongst all the precincts and their clerks. So we would just have that remain consistent.
Weren't you saying that ADA 2s, there's a group of them at 101 and another group at 104?
Right.
I guess I would question then, why would you come back and bring the newest employee in at what is a higher salary than the rest of your?
Right. And so network administrator 2 position, it was a request of 94,598. We're recommending 89,599. That's what the existing, there's one existing network administrator 2 position. It's budgeted at this 89,000 amount, so we'd recommend budgeting it at that same amount. That compensation ratio is a 0.99, it's almost a 1. And so that would make sense there. That's the reason for our recommendation. So that would round out their network administration team to a staff of 3, which we also reviewed peer counties for how many network type positions were amongst each of those departments, and the average was about 3. So that also made sense. Are there any initial questions on the adds to staff, any of the data?
I mean, I'm sure we'll come back around to this, right? Right? At some point?
Yeah.
This is just preliminary.
Yeah, we hadn't taken
Yeah.
any consensus.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
I'll reserve my comments.
and and that's kind of how it works, is typically we discuss this, you just get a round table, kind of a consensus of whether it should
It's not a
move
vote,
forward.
it's just seems reasonable, and then nothing's in seeming until.
If anything's completely unreasonable to you,
Yes, sir.
point it out.
Speak up.
Yeah.
I have to speak over Jim over here sometimes.
Jim's saving his.
And then on the discussion today specifically, we didn't know what we would be able to get to this week. But, Anna giving this overview, I know next week, some of these departments will want to give you their, give you some information from their side of things as well. And so you'll have that information too to help make your decision. So.
Right. And then sometimes the court will want a breakdown of the data that I'm providing or something like, to see something more in detail, and so I can turn around and offer that or email it to you if anything piques a question.
Thank you.
So I think this will be quicker to touch on. These are the salary adjustments that HR is initiating a request on. These are those 5 positions I mentioned yesterday that had a compensation ratio below that 0.8 marker where we're always careful to review. So this means they are below, they're more than 20% below market pay. And we want to try to keep them at or above 20%. And so,
Kind of like Commissioner Smith on how did that jump so far one year? If they were in the range last year, how did we get out of whack on that?
I can see what specific, if it was information from the Economic Research Institute for private sector, or if it was something wild going on with our peer entities, and I can try to pinpoint each of them. Some of these were already very low at either 0.8 or very close to 0.8 last year, and so you could see like the last couple on these lists, they're now at a 7.99, 7.93, and 0.76. The biggest differences are amongst the 2 maintenance of building positions on high. Those 2 are the biggest swings, so for those I can drill down and see where the biggest change came from.
And isn't one of those at the jail, and then there's one here? Isn't that what is that what we did last year, giving the assistant director out at the jail, and then one here?
I believe so.
But I harp on this, we haven't even been 8 months, we spent a fortune to get to that salary scale that we were gonna live with, look good, and everything in place, and now we come back every year with salary adjustments, so it hadn't even been a year. And, I don't understand, I know things change, but I'm somewhat disappointed we spend that much money and we're not where we need to be.
Yeah. Well, I guess the good news is there's only 5 out of 1,100
I actually don't think it's
employees,
that.
It's just some big changes.
Yeah, but it's a noticeable change.
The number, where do we want to be? I mean, of course,
0.8 to 0.1, 1.2.
okay, yeah, so that's,
Right, and so we have a recommended budget just based on the existing midpoint within each of these pay grades. And then if the court were to place them at that salary, I have on this column here, the resulting compensation ratio. And so just, again, some of them not even at a 0.9 yet, but far enough from a 0.8 that we would hope that they wouldn't come up on this list again the following year.
yeah. Well, it's
We
probably
can't
remarkable.
control the data, but we can control this, and I guess
Yeah.
that's what we kind of need to keep in mind.
Yeah, and, but if we control it to the extent that, below the 0.8 or above the 1.2, then it creates a lot of,
We're always right on the edge.
yeah,
Next year, then we have more.
yeah.
Right, which is why I wouldn't recommend just adjusting them to 0.8, because then they'll probably, we might be having the same conversation next year.
Yeah. So, the general consent, the midpoint is kind of a, if you got your employees in that range, and you'd say average is in midpoint, the variance has to do with a lot of things, performance reviews and I guess, tenure to a certain extent in, things with internal in that department. Basically, did I miss that? Is that kind of right?
Yes, that's right. Those are the typical factors and
That gives-
explaining why there's,
It gives
Different
management, so a little bit of management for the elected officials or department heads to have some discretion in there.
Well, those 5 are probably pretty important on this.
They look like they are.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
do.
so if there are no more questions on these, which I have my takeaway and drilling down and kind of seeing what caused the flare up here
Okay,
for those two positions that are at a .73. Next, we can cover one of two different items, which I think can be longer conversations. And so I would just ask the court what they would prefer to review first. And so we can either review just all of the general salary adjustments, those 61 line items. And so you can kind of see
How
what
many,
the,
how many line items
61,
for salary adjustments?
yes. Where it's just an individual department requesting a budget increase for an individual position. So there's 61 of those. There's no crazy charts or tables, though. It's just line
and,
items.
and you have a recommendation on each one of those?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Have you gone ahead and taken if they're at a .85 right now and they're wanting to go to a .9, are you removing those or are we reviewing those as well?
So I have them categorized like my yes, others, and no's. I have them categorized like that, and so the court can filter through. So we can review that, or we can go into the elected officials' request and looking at the elected officials as a whole. What would the court like to cover?
Probably the shorter conversation is gonna be elected officials, I would imagine. Is that,
Yeah, that's fine,
would y'all agree to that?
that's fine.
You got a little, you're on,
Yeah, but, I don't, whatever y'all
yeah,
do.
we're good to 4:30.
Okay.
So you kind of take us from where we go.
Maybe we can cover both.
We maybe can.
Okay.
I just wanted to be sure if we were short on time, if there was a preference, we go cover that first. So we can cover the elected officials. And so here I have a list of all of the elected officials, except for those officials who have kind of statute mandated salaries or rules that are having to be followed for their salaries. I filtered those out. I've plugged in the compensation ratio for our officials. A reminder about this compensation ratio for the officials. There's no private sector data. This is all just what our peer counties are paying their corresponding official. And averaging that amongst the 9 peer counties, and that's how we come up with this compensation ratio right here. Yes, sir.
Before we get started on this, I asked about it last year. Did you make the change? Because several of the counties that you had commissioners, you compared us to, were counties that have,
Unit road system.
yes,
I actually did not, but thank you for bringing that up.
okay.
Okay. Yes, I can plug that in.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Here, the line items that are in gray, those are the officials that submitted a salary increase request. Okay, and so in this column here, you can see their requested salary. There's a lag on my mouse, I'm noticing. But there's your requested salary amount there. And so I've prepared some scenarios if the court would like to consider the adjustments on how to implement an adjustment.
Is that what this peak or purple or lavender?
I have three options.
Okay.
So the first is that pinkish, and then the second is that orange option, and then the blue option at the end. And I have at the bottom there totals of each, total cost of each of those adjustments. So the first is if the court just wanted to place a minimum of 0.90 for all the officials, that's what the cost would be, $33,617. If the court wanted to just have all the officials assigned to a ratio of 1, that'd be $111,000 and $704. And then the last option there, because I know the court also has always been interested in maintaining kind of a staggered salary approach, specifically for the justice of the peace is based on function. So that's already embedded in the existing salaries amongst the JPs. So in order to not disturb that structure already in place, the court could just apply a flat rate amongst the departments there that are JPs and constables. And so I have a scenario of a 3% just flat rate increase on the existing salaries for JPs and constables. That cost would come to $28,014. And so it would be that 3% flat rate increase, and then applying whatever COLA after that that the court approved. Were there any other scenarios that the court was interested in seeing or playing around with?
Anything else?
No.
I mean,
That didn't take long.
No, that was really short. Yeah. Okay. So let me make sure that I covered. Oh, I have a last slide here. Just, I know the court also typically likes to review this, and we do have a salary request from our new department head. So we have a comparison here of department head salaries with their compensation ratio. And then the line item highlighted in blue is the request coming from the county engineer for their own salary. And it seems like a reasonable request. You can see it does have the lowest comp ratio amongst the department heads, which we would not recommend for a position that hard to fill. That requires additional certifications on top of a bachelor's degree. And so we would recommend the salary that's being requested. We would even recommend that the court consider something closer to the compensation ratio of the director of IT, who's at a 0.96. Kind of a reminder there for that 0.96 ratio. Prior to posting the position of the director of IT, for applications, the court had made an adjustment to bring that position closer to market to be able to attract a qualified applicant. And so that's why it's kind of a little higher than some of the other departments, and why I use it as reference for the county engineer position.
What does bringing the county engineer to 0.9, what does that do?
To a 0.9?
Yeah, because I was just curious. You said the comp ratio right now is 0.89.
0.89. Mhm.
So what happens if it goes to 0.90? What does that do to that salary?
It would go up from 136 to 138,
Okay, just, okay,
634.
okay.
And that 0.96 ratio, what that salary would look like is 147, 876.
But the only request is the county engineer, is that correct? Is that
Yes,
what I
sir.
heard?
That's the
Okay.
only department head request.
And
Was that like a?
And what, and the request is 140? And that would make it a what?
A nine, probably 9.2, 9.3.
0.91,
What?
0.91. That is it for my slides. I think then we can jump into the actual sheet that lists the 61 salary adjustments.
Okay?
I'm going to stop my share.
Is that on here? Is that on this?
No.
No, because
Okay,
the font would be very, very tiny.
be kind of similar to looking at it on the, up here?
you get worse.
Yes. I feel like I've improved on my font size as the years have gone on. I know when I first started, I was very inconsiderate with my font size.
But our eyesight's getting worse, not better. So by the time you fix it, we're already past that.
It needs another adjustment at that point.
Yeah.
I'm buying the booklets next year.
The hard copy.
We'll let you pick the color.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness.
Sorry, I'll make it. Well, we'll get there, I promise. Wait,
I feel like, I optometrist, say when.
Here, let me
Well,
pull.
not yet.
not yet.
Not yet. You like 1 or 2?
It blew me up.
I think I have it. You got it there by department?
Currently, yes, but I can sort it any,
Okay.
I can sort it by position, department A to Z. Do you want department by number?
No, A to Z is fine.
It's in here.
Come on, you want to come
Which
over?
one's worth
I
to
can make it
look
bigger.
at?
Hold on.
Come on over.
I wonder if can you get the
Close
whole
enough to read it, Judge,
screen?
you'll slap me.
No, no, I'll move. I've got it on my laptop and I can expand it.
Oh, that looks pretty good right there now.
Better.
Yeah, that looks pretty good.
Okay.
Oh, well, good idea, Ben.
I don't know, like, so you like to make it the whole screen. I don't know how they,
I don't know how to get rid of all of this.
because when Anna was sharing, it was the whole one, wasn't it? No, I'm being dumb. I'm mad because I should have printed this because I like to think like I'm mad at myself.
Yeah, I should have too.
I assume the decreases are because that position's open? Or what is it? We have,
Those are positions that they want to give back, right?
Deputy
they're
county
open,
clerk,
sir?
like the deputy county clerk.
Right, I mean, why is that a reduction of 41,699? Because it's not a filled position right now? But it's a budgeted position, but it hadn't been filled, or what?
Or is it eliminated?
Right, they're wanting to bring it to a dollar placeholder and not fill it. So let's see.
Explain, I didn't quite understand hear what you were saying. It's a placeholder?
They want to,
Eyes and
it's
ears.
not filled, and they may not fill it, but they don't want to lose the budgeted position. Is that correct?
So they want to
Right.
put a dollar placeholder in, which if we do that, we need to have a footnote. These are all the places that had dollar placeholders, but if they're filled, he'll run at a cost.
I know you mentioned that last year as well, so we'll be sure and bring those all
Keep
together
it.
at one day, the next couple weeks.
Yeah, because when we start narrowing
Out
down,
everywhere.
right, when we start really getting close and there's dollar differences, we need to be sure.
Yeah, they don't want to get caught in the position of counting that position as one that we only fund how much of it, and the rest of it goes to general fund.
Yeah.
So we have, so I've broken these up by the three categories again, the yeses, no's, and others. And so, the no's are positions that submitted salary adjustments, or departments that submitted adjustment requests for positions that are at a comp ratio at or above a 1. Anything at or above a 1, they're getting paid at market. So we had those recommended as no's, because we would recommend the court prioritize those that are lower against market. And then I have my other category. For those others, and this is, so we have about 18 positions that I have in that no category for recommendation. And then I have the majority of the positions, there are 38 of them, of the requests that I have flagged as others because they are below 1, but they're above that 0.8 marker. So they're in range, but if the court wanted to adjust salaries, this would be that first group, you know, we would recommend.
And these were all positions that were looked at in that study we did by private industry and public entities. These were all positions that were looked at and placed in a position, right?
Right, they were placed, they were assigned a pay grade within
Hey.
the new structure, and then they would have been
So
assessed against market.
So they were all in that pay grade that was assigned structure, but yet coming back and asking for additional money this year.
Right, and just because they were assigned into a pay structure or a pay grade, doesn't necessarily mean they were adjusted past COLA. There were only a handful of positions that were adjusted on top of COLA to bring them within their pay structure. The majority of those positions were deputy positions from constables' offices, and I think we had a few clerical positions too that had to be brought up to be at a minimum of their pay grade.
And all these positions were brought up to a certain standard last year
That's right.
in that study, 8 months ago,
Yes, sir.
whatever it was. So we're already back in less than a year asking for increases after we've already done that.
Yes.
Okay.
So we have 38 positions in that kind of other department where they're not below the 0.8, so they're not outliers or way out of range for market, but they're below market. And so if the court wanted to take an action, we could do that.
They're above 0.80, okay.
Yep.
So they were looked at and they were in that range last year and they're still in the range. It's just a request to increase them, so.
Right.
So it's 38 out of the 61.
Yes, sir.
Which, again, as everybody knows, we start giving serious thought to that, we're gonna see a flood of other salary adjustments coming. Because if we're gonna take somebody from a 0.85 to a 0.95 just off of a request, why wouldn't you look at everybody go, all of mine are 0.85s and I want them to be, so just before we get too far into it.
Yes, and just as an example where how Commissioner brings up for some, because this has been asked before, like, well, if we did want to do a countywide adjustment based on comp ratio, what would that look like? And so if we wanted to bring all non-step positions up to a 0.85, it would cost $77,000.
How much?
77. If we wanted to bring all positions to a 0.9, it costs $321,000.
Whoa, that's a big jump.
Yeah. If you wanted to bring all positions to a 1, that'd be 1.8 million.
Would that take the ones that are over 1 down?
No,
See?
yeah.
But it's a free society, right? So
Yeah. But it's just good, to have in the background, because that's a valid point that would come up in doing so. I do have a handful of yeses based on comp ratio. I only have 3. It's based on comp ratio and then other factors.
Based on comp ratio, that wasn't there when we did this, when we set everything in place?
Right. And
So they're already out of comp ratio in 8 months' time?
well, only one of them is. And so we have, 2 of these aren't, one of them is a salary request, that very top one, they're reclassifications. I have 5 reclassifications that I'm kind of leaving separate. I wasn't planning on presenting the reclassifications today because there's 5 that are up for review, but 2 of them I'm still pending information from the department on. So I don't have a full assessment for the court just
You're
yet.
not ready, let's,
So we can touch on that next week. And here we have the payroll administrator position. This position is below, sorry, there's rounding there, but that's one of the positions at a 7.99 that I had as the HR recommended salary adjustment.
Right, yeah, that was in one previous, wasn't it?
Yes, so it's at a 0.799. You could round at a 0.8, but again, we'll have this conversation again next year if we don't, if it's not addressed. So that's one of them. It's just one of those outliers on the previous list of 5 that I already highlighted. And then those other 2 is from the engineering office. And so you could see their ratios aren't, terrible. We have a 0.98 for the assistant county engineer, which is just newly become vacant with the appointment of Amy into the county engineer position. So that position will soon be posted once we work with Amy on that.
right.
Because it's going to be posted, and because of the history of lack of applicants when it was last posted, we would recommend going forward with the requested adjustment from the department here, which isn't that high. It doesn't look very high here. It's 123, the current budget is listed at 123,401, and they're requesting 125. The reason why it's not that different is because there was an increase to the budget when Amy became interim. So that budget had been recently adjusted. So that's why there's not that big of a difference. It was originally at 117,000.
Yeah.
But 125 would be fair to market and I think would help us tackle and avoid the issue we had with the previous posting where we struggled to get applicants. I think we only had, I forget what my note, I think I put it in there. We only received, oh goodness, 4 applicants that met the minimum qualifications in the last posting.
For assistant engineer?
Yes. 4 qualified applicants over a year and a half.
Given Amy's background and history, it may be that she has a different perspective on those applicants and whether or not they can be trained to do what.
Exactly.
I think that's a very fair statement.
That is a very fair statement.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that's a different
She has
process.
somebody in mind, disqualified.
And so the other yes I have there is for the county engineer, and that's just based on comparing it to the peer group of department heads. There, so that, those are the yeses. The noes, again, their ratios are already at above a 1, and HR didn't identify any difficulties with the position, such as turnover, or difficulty in attracting applicants. So that's why those data points were also reviewed before marking them as no's or ends. For instance, there we have the DA clerk positions marked as no's. Their comp ratios are at 1 exactly, and we get inundated with applications when we open that position up, so we don't see an issue with those. And that, just as an example, that's the reasoning behind that's placed on the recommendation. Any questions about those, or do we want?
Get that to us, though, in a printed form?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, or is it on the budget workshop? It's already, I can print it. Never mind, I can do that.
You mean Chrissy can do that?
Yeah. No, actually, you walked me through it today.
No, oh, wow.
Who walked it through me? No, you did, that's right. Sorry about that. I knew it was one of you.
You need.
Print it twice.
Great. And so I'm not sure if those folks who are planning to come on Tuesday, if they're also going to be speaking to their salary adjustments, they may be able to offer some more information. Much of the justifications that we reviewed were related to individual employee performance and tenure. Okay. Just to add some more context.
Let the record show that I'm fixing to walk out of the meeting and turn over the gavel to Commissioner Perry. Y'all won't fight. Be nice to each other.
For sure.
See you tomorrow. Continue.
Okay. That's all I really have, unless the court wants to see scenarios of approving, or what it would look like if we went forward with approving some of the requests. And then that's where Haley can start to filter and give totals for.
And for me personally, I'd rather wait a little bit longer. Maybe we get a better idea. We've got a general idea what our revenues are.
Yeah.
But get closer to that time. It's gonna be hard on salary increases for me this year. Unless it means an adjustment to get them within range.
You know, I've battled with this back and forth. I look at this very preliminary amounts here that auditor has given us, and I look down here at this target fund balance, and it shows that if we do everything that's been asked, we're short $20 million.
Well, I think there's one double up on there. There's a pretty big double up on there, but it's still 20 million, at least 19 million.
The COLA on the step thing.
Yeah. So there's a couple of scenarios that are loaded in on both.
Which
of those.
is, what, 6.5 cents?
Well, that's about 8 cents.
About 8 cents.
Yeah, I mean, 20 million is between 6 and 7 cents. And really, and I'm preaching to the choir here, and I understand that, but there's only 3 ways that we have to do that, in my mind, or a combination of the 3. One's go below our target fund balance, and we can't sustain that forever. We can't keep dipping in that and trying to balance the budget with it. or two, the
Increase
tax
revenue.
increase, tax your revenue, or three, adjust the budget. And all we've seen today are costs to the budget. And, you know, in the last 2.5 years, I've already told you all this, 2.5 to 3 years, we've added 30 positions, and we're looking at 14 more. You're talking a good $4 million or more to the budget. With those, if we added these positions that are requested with the 30 we've had the last 2.5 years, and I'm just using that as a round figure, that's.
And Jim, I've got one question for you on that. What's the net when you consider what we increased by, but also the ones that we removed? We removed a lot of positions. I'm curious what the net is in
Yeah,
that.
but the fact remains, the budget
It's still there.
is still there, it is what it is, and we've got to figure out how to get into it.
We didn't remove them, we just took we took a factor out.
But that was after we cut several jailer
There were,
positions.
there was
Well, there's some, yeah, but.
jailers that were literally removed. Some have
Just
been turned into
total positions.
placeholders.
Correct.
So those aren't budgeted for.
But we're still faced with, we haven't even talked about COLA, we haven't talked about health insurance yet, and what that could do to us, so there's so many unknowns, but yet all we've talked about is salary increases and adding positions, which certainly aren't going to help balance the budget.
I mean, we have, I think there's $8 million increase in spending request is what I
That's it.
calculated yesterday. And then there's $6 million that were projected to be under budget. And
Yet we're still,
yet we're still spending
yeah,
ahead of last year.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
there's some fundamental
and we've seen some
issues that we've got to.
astronomical increases in our expenditures over the last few years, especially by departments and total. Some departments, 80% in the last 5 years increase in the budget. We've gone from,
And I think we'd be naive if we didn't realize that we're probably gonna have to talk about all three of those issues you
yeah,
just brought up.
somehow, there has to be a balance somehow. It's not sustainable. We've been blessed with our economy, very blessed with our economy, been able to do a lot of things, but now then we have to figure out how to live within our means.
Just to give you an idea, in 2012, I believe it was, had we had approved that budget that year, we'd have had a $5 million fund balance. 5 million. And that's when we had to go all the way to the rollback rate. Francis, remember those wonderful days?
Well, I
Maybe
mean-
you might have been around, I don't know for sure, but you don't wanna play that game.
No, I think what in 2017, y'all were sitting at .505, I believe, and now we're down to .31980,
8-0.
something like that, so.
But I mean, you're talking about going, if you want a 33 with all this that's been asked for and, other than a little bit of, on this, I guess it's the step positions. The only thing I think that's doubled up is the step position plans.
We don't have all the details on that still too, but
Well,
we had taken that out
even
today.
if we just approve.
Okay, well, that's good.
Prior to the meeting.
Even if we just approve steps, which we've already approved last year that was gonna last a lifetime, $400,000 with nothing else added, just steps on that step plan, $400,000.
That was increased last year?
No, that from last year to this year, for this year's budget, it'll cost us $400,000 more because we approved that step plan for those step employees last year.
And that's been for some years now, so, as those employees move up, yes, it's already planned for them to get an increase,
Yeah,
COLA or not.
We
Um,
adopted
Is
it.
that in this?
Yes, so we always do that because we do know what employees, as long as they are still employees as of 10/1, they will be getting those bumps up through that step pay. And so those are always estimated the best we can and then included. It is already embedded in the budget.
And those step kind of increases range between 2% and 4% amongst the ranks.
But I,
But where we're at right now, based on, we're at roll, I mean, we're talking about having to go to rollback. I mean, you're right at, you're right at having to go to,
Yes, if you wanted to do it all in 1 year and include all of those things, of course, listed.
Which is not gonna happen. I think I'm safe in saying that. I think one of the consensuses we have today is we gotta do a lot of scrutinizing as we go forward.
Yeah.
And everybody might have to be willing to give something up.
suck it up.
'Cause there was a,
Yeah,
we somewhat knew last year when we kept squeezing that difference between the tax rate and the 33%.
We knew it.
We kept squeezing and squeezing. We knew we'd hit a year where we've gotta, call the dogs off a little bit and figure out how to.
And, you know,
I
this-
think where the calling needs to be is on the spending side. For a long time now, I've said we have a spending problem here. We don't have a revenue problem
Yeah.
whatsoever. It's a spending
I
problem.
think it has outpaced, if possible, the revenue side. Well, it has, because we've
Well, if,
dipped into our ending fund balance.
but if you also look, we've kept our revenues within $5 million from year to year, because what was the lowest, 77, highest was 82?
Yes, on ad valorem,
And we've
yes.
done that for 7 years.
Yes, so what's increasing in revenue is your other revenues, so your fines, fees,
Yeah.
sales
Other
tax.
than tax, yeah.
We've allowed spending to go up while we've kept revenues capped.
And what, do you have totals on spending like last year versus what this and previous? Can you quote those real quick? Totals?
Like what? Like actual
Yeah,
expenditures?
budgeted, well, or budgeted, what it's gonna cost us on tax rate, or what was the budgeted
So like, I mean, just,
expenditures last year?
so last year you budgeted roughly 167 million.
Okay, and the year before, 150?
I'd have to get out. Yeah, and then little budget binder. So,
Financial expert over there. If, when the
Thank you.
electrolyte plant and the packaging
Had it
plant
tapped.
gets going, what is that gonna bring
Well, I
in?
think she said it's $750,000 on the paper plant, and I don't know what the electrolyte.
Now, there's
Oh,
tax
as far as the
abatements, there's tax abatements.
And both of them both of those are in TIF 4,
Okay.
so we only get 30% of the increment
For the time being.
for the, until you and I are dead, so.
wait, all of this?
Well, it certainly includes me.
I was just asking.
Well, and that's, that's the cutting edge of bringing new industry, and you've got to play those games to get them here.
Yeah.
But then it's forever before you realize
Yeah,
anywhere near 80% of the.
okay, Francis?
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't want to interrupt. But you were asking about like budgeted expenditures. So if you start with 2022, and these are rough numbers, so like 135 million, 142 million, 151 million, 167 million. One 57.
What was this?
You have some skews there, but
Minimum was like 7 million, was that right? You said between 2 years was 7?
and so a lot of that has been, COLA, new positions, but then, just big increases here and, I'm trying to think of some, the Tyler, like you had some things like all the Tyler products that hit like over the last couple of years. So like skewing things, moving things up, but big chunks, you have little increases here and there. But there's some big ticket items that have
And
pushed
IT
that.
was a big piece of that, but we were so far behind.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, I mean, that's part of the problem, yeah.
With us being $6 million under budget, if we adopted, if we said to everybody, go back to last year's budget,
Yes. So,
I mean, I mean, that's gonna be a significant, I mean, That's about, I think it's like $7 million in savings or something. I mean, something.
Yeah, so-
It's not, I mean, I was surprised by how little it,
Under budget.
when I played with the spreadsheet yesterday afternoon. Yeah. So
So-
if you were to go, if you just say, everybody's gonna do last year's budget. And
It would
and you
be,
plug that
if
number
it
in.
was 157.3, it would be about a $5 million difference. Because I'm counting for that transfer with the 10 million transfer with permanent improvement in ARPA, so.
But see, and that
makes
throws
it.
me off
But that,
too.
but taking that into account,
So
right,
you are,
157, so yes, it's about a $5 million
so we had $10
increase.
million worth of expenses last year that we didn't necessarily,
We got a transfer, yes.
that we
Because-
transferred out of the general fund.
Yeah, 11, right at 11 million, I think, that's what increased our ending fund balance.
So what occurred is that in 2024, right? 2024, we
shouldn't that-
moved $10 million, roughly $10 million of personnel
Permanent.
expenditures to ARPA. So then we freed up $10 million of budgeted funds in general fund. So we had this fund balance that carried forward that we normally would not have had. And so then we used that, moved it to permanent improvement, utilizing it for downtown jail. And so what it did doing that was kept our expenditures constant as much as possible.
Then why are we borrowing $30 million for the downtown jail?
So that 10 million was just a very small piece of that. So that 10 million plus some of the bonds you have sitting plus ARPA, we're still $7, $8 million
Possible
short.
$52 million project.
$52 million project.
55 million.
at this time. And so I think kind of getting back to what Commissioner Jones was saying, so taking some of those things that skewed it into account, last year's adopted budget versus this year's request is about $5 million. There's a $5 million increase there. And it's very specific areas, and I know we'll be talking through those larger areas next week, and so maybe that will shine some light there. But like you said, we're gonna come under budget roughly six and a half million. We had looked at probably about 2.5 million of that is personnel. So again, still coming under budget, even though we're using that vacancy factor. You're getting pretty close there when you're looking at that, even though that does still sound like a very large amount. Percentage-wise, it's getting pretty small.
Pennies wise it is too. On the tax rate, you're talking about $6 million is only.
Million is 2 cents.
2 pence.
Yes. Yes.
2 pennies, 2 cents.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we'll continue to analyze that and get your thoughts and then put together scenarios
When
and
you
see what
start
that looks
talking
like.
millions of dollars, you're not talking about saving on toilet paper or
Right.
anything else. I mean, you gotta have big dollar items.
Operating makes a
It
very
can,
small
but-
difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But some of these bigger costs, like when you look at, that make up the budget, indigent defense and
Oh, yeah.
running 2 different correctional facilities.
Oh, we've
and
talked about it.
All of those things,
We've talked
it's
about it,
just,
yesterday, and I wanted to emphasize that yesterday.
they add up quickly.
That's, well north of 15 cents of our total tax rate are mandates that we don't get any money back. We make,
Yep, we spend it and the government doesn't reimburse us.
that's right. We've been told you will do it.
Well, it's been helpful hearing some of the, the thoughts y'all have had today, and that will help us put together, have some scenarios ready, so when we're continuing these discussions.
And we're gonna come back when, Tuesday?
Tuesday.
Yes, if you are, were you at a stopping point for
I
yours?
am, I'm at
Okay.
a stopping point.
Well, that's good, because I think now that we've got everybody frustrated, it's a great time to,
Yeah.
Enjoy their holiday weekend. But yes, so we'll be coming back on Tuesday morning. And so we have a pretty heavy week next week. We will be going through all of the details now of the department request. And so hearing from those departments, some of them we can speak on capital request. On Tuesday specifically, we have IT and the SO scheduled to go through their departments and the increases there. And so that's on the agenda. And then next Friday, the 11th, We have a very busy day that day where we have all of your outside entities that you contract with coming in. And so we'll talk through that. We'll also have Chris Collins here that day to talk about economic development. And so a lot going on next week, but we should cover a substantial portion of the details next week. So.
Remember the 10th.
Yes, sir.
Is-
Yes. And so on that Thursday, I think that will be our maybe lighter day. And I know Commissioner Smith is not able to be with us that day. And
I'll
so-
try to Zoom it, but I know to participate, I have to be seen. My wife's having some surgery that day, so.
Gotcha. All right.
And that may be a good day to circle back to some things too, that we've
Yeah.
touched on these last 2 days.
Because something tells me we'll know his opinion on those when we circle back. Well, Commissioner Smith won't have a problem sharing that. Anything else come before the court? If not, we'll go ahead and adjourn.
All right, I just wanted to do that.
Do you remember that day you were saying like something? was-
Recording stopped.
Judge, what are you up to?
Okay, so I had stuff I printed today. And like it had the same stuff.
I got 3 yesterday.